Getting into the culture, like I'm sure you have a decent part in that, as like working with them and saying like maybe they didn't even know it was possible as a refugee to own a house. Like, I mean, because if I went to another country, I'd be like, can I even own a house here? So I'm sure there's stuff like that. Like, I think that's like North Hill. It's obvious the culture is different here now. I don't know if it's always been that way. It's really cool. I mean, I think that's like the beauty of America. Like, but how does that like? How do you play a part? Do you feel like you play a part in that outside of the housing, like just on because you're doing, like you said, once a week at least meetings with families, like you're seeing through them learning probably English a little more, if they don't know it, or maybe just learning like communicating, because even sometimes communicating through cultures is different. I know, at least from my experience, like I've worked with a lot of like European people, and they're just, I mean, it's a small thing, but like their sense of humor is like way different. You know, and it's like, did you just say that to me? And then they kind of like smirk, and it's like, oh, you know.
Yeah.
And then like with Latino culture we work with, and they're like super tight. Like they're all connected and they all work together, and most you probably see it. So anyways, as Americans, like I see a lot of the bad stuff. I know it's like, I love America. I think we live in the greatest country, but like, because I've been here, like I'm like, this is all the bad stuff, and then they bring like all this really cool stuff as immigrants, and like, you know, I don't know what I'm trying to ask, other than like, how do you feel like that plays out through legacies of success and your personal relationship?
Yeah, and at the beginning you said, so North Hill is one of the things, it's a neighborhood that has always been home to new Americans, which is something that I've learned for many years was a very deeply Italian-American neighborhood. You see like the remnants of all the Italian restaurants and Medios on Main Street, Dantino's on Falls, right? There's always been that heritage of a place that has been welcoming for new people. And I think that's incredible that that's continued, especially in these last 20 or so years, but really over 100 years of refugee resettlement. And there are challenges with differences, right? So I won't at all say that there's always every cultural situation is navigated perfectly, both by myself or by the community. But there is an openness to understand that I think has allowed many different cultures to thrive in the community. And so as far as the role that we play, the legacies of success, we typically are working with families that have been here a little bit longer, right? Because you could imagine, especially if you're coming as a refugee, but even as an immigrant, you're getting established, finding a job, working on learning English, getting a kind of a social support network in place. And then home ownership is probably a little further down the road. So we have worked with families that have probably, if they've come to the country, been here, I don't know, 3 or 5 years. And so some of that I think is a little bit less of the work we do initially. But I would say the biggest thing, and this is something that I think has grown and even could grow more, is, and this is a culture of home ownership, understanding what does it mean to be a homeowner, right? There's the financial part. Yeah, there's the home maintenance part, which is something that we do and help with. Families go through kind of a checklist of items of, all right, like we're sitting here at the beginning of fall, like let's change furnace filters together. Let's talk about what are the plumbing problems we can fix. And here's 2 or 3 plumbers we trust that you can call if it's beyond this. And so educating in that way. But even that mindset of what does it mean to be a homeowner, it looks, very different depending on the culture, as far as what are the preconceptions we bring to that, as far as what is a way to be friendly to our neighbors, what is a way to not only care for the inside but the outside of our home. So I think it's just trying to always be open to that we have a lot to learn from each other. And so it's been incredible for a number of the families we've been blessed to work with, how easy it is for them to connect with their neighbors, because they come from more of a communal based culture where it's the idea, if there aren't 20 people at our house for dinner, then we're not, our table's not long enough, our doors don't open wide enough. And so I think it's been really interesting to learn, and also then to navigate together. What does it mean to have successful home ownership? And so we want our families to be, financially stable. We want them to feel secure in their home that they can care for, but always, like I said, as well, to be able to be a force for good in the community. And yeah, that's the joy of, in a multicultural setting, figuring out how do we do that and what does that look like is always interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. I imagine there's like, I know at least with Americans, most of the time, there's a certain sense of like pride with ownership, like a good kind. Like, I own this, I'm
Yeah.
going to take care of it. Is that the same typical?
Yeah, I would say the pride in home ownership as far as the desire to maintain the upkeep of the home, as well as, I mean, I would say, and this is just getting deep down into the roots of like different types of cultures, just having a conversation about this with a couple of people in the community, that there is, in that communal sense that exists in so many different cultures, there's this idea of wanting to be, and there's good and bad to this, but wanting to be seen in a positive way in the community, right? Be perceived as somebody who's giving to the community. I mean, the community at large, within your own cultural community, and how homeownership is a way that families feel like that they can step into that role of leadership, even within their own community, because they have stability. They have a place where they're saying, this is where we are going to stay long term, and so we want to be leaders in the community that we exist in.
Yeah, I imagine that like, what is the like psychologist, like the law of needs, where like,
Oh yeah, Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
a former teacher, so we talk about all that stuff all the time. Yeah.
yeah, and that's like pretty high up there, like shelter, food, like sense of like community.
Yeah.
And then you kind of, that's when those are met, that's like when you start to excel, right?
Yes. No, that's a really, I never actually made that connection before, but that's like 100% to say if a family can feel safe, stable, and secure in their home, that it not only impacts their family unit, but it has a ripple effect in a positive way to the community and to other people they're interacting with.